for someone who engages you, Kirkpatrick Price, what's the process for SOC 2 certification look like?
When you engage an auditor, you have to find an auditor who has experience with your industry, experience with your technology. Just like on the tax side, if you were hiring someone to audit your financials, you wouldn't want a CPA who had never audited the oil and gas industry if you're in the oil and gas industry. And so, it's important to look at the credentials of the auditor that you're hiring. And so that usually happens at first. People do their due diligence and they enter into that engagement with a CPA firm. And then usually people will first undertake a gap analysis. That's the term that we use at Kirkpatrick Price. Other people might call it readiness. But going through an exercise to understand, okay, are we ready for the audit? What do we have? What do we not have? Looking for those gaps. Usually people have discoveries in documentation. People suffer in the world of documentation. They are usually finding gaps in logging and encryption. Those are kind of the top three that we find that people, when they first undertake this, they do that gap analysis and they identify some problems in that area. And so they go through that readiness phase of trying to find the problems and shore up the problems before the audit starts. But then when the audit does start, the process includes documentation review, looking at the policies and procedures. What does this organization plan to do in an emergency? How does this organization plan to configure their systems? And then there is tests of controls. And those tests can be things like interviews where you're corroborating information with the people who work for the service provider, looking at active configurations and the state of systems. How are they configured? How are they operating? And then reviewing output from things that would prove that 3 months ago, our access control system was functioning. 3 months ago, we were logging events on our network servers and our application servers. And so those kinds of tests are performed in order to corroborate whether or not these things were in place over a period of time and operating effectively.